Hey, friends, and welcome back to the DCHP Lounge, the place where we discover our roots, connect with our people, heal what hurts us, and protect what matters most. Today's episode is one that hits deeply into the final pillar, which is protect. We are talking about legacy, family, and the money conversations that too many of us never got to have. Now, I know we love to explore the heart and healing on this podcast, but this is about strategy too. And there's no one better to help us navigate than my guest today, Kimberly Clement. Kim is a finance coach, wealth strategist, and broker with Yellow Brick Financial. She's passionate about helping families protect and grow generational wealth through life insurance, family banking strategies, and custom financial blueprints. She's also my partner in both life and purpose, and the heart she brings to this work is what makes her different. Kim works with high income professionals, small business owners, and families who are ready to break cycles and build something lasting, just like the Rockefellers did. So, if you've ever wondered, is my life insurance structured the right way? Can I really borrow for myself and build family wealth at the same time? What would it look like to teach my kids about money now instead of later? Then this is your episode. So get cozy, grab a notebook. You're going to need it because you're about to learn how to protect your legacy in ways that we've never been taught. Kimberly, let's dive in. When was the last time that you slowed down long enough to ask yourself, where did I come from? What am I carrying? And what do I want to pass on? Hey, I'm Jasmine, your host, self-mastery coach, photographer, and a lover of deep, meaningful conversations. And this is the DCHP Lounge. Each week, we hold space for real stories, soulful reflections, and intentional dialogue to help you discover your roots, connect with what matters most, heal the parts of you that you need, and protect the legacy you are here to leave behind. Because healing your story isn't just personal, it's generational. So grab your journal and let's get deep together. Kim, I'm so excited to have you here because I know firsthand the way that you pour into families and legacy work, and I cannot wait for our listeners to hear your heart. Before we dive in, can you take a moment to introduce yourself and share a little bit about what led you to the work that you do today?
Hi, Jasmine. Super excited to be here today to speak about my favorite thing, which is money. But really, I'm a wealth strategist with Yellow Brick Financial. We actually help families, high net worth earners, professionals, really anybody who's looking to change the way they actually use their money and talk about, specifically today, we're talking about legacy banking. I actually started doing this because before now, I was actually in the food and beverage space helping businesses grow within their finances. So I've always been in the finance space, but with a few life things that's happened over the last 4 years, it's actually transitioned me into this new space of impact. So I'm here now today speaking with you because that's my biggest goal and my biggest mission is to impact families for the future and to teach them that what we were taught before is not how money actually works, but how we can actually move forward with the right knowledge and impact our kids and their kids.
Well, that's amazing. And I just knew that the only way to start out this segment is with you because not only have I been alongside of you, seeing you through this journey, but I've learned so much myself, and I'm very excited for our listeners to be able to learn different things, especially us knowing that we're now in this information stage of life. And technology gives us so much, but sometimes it's like narrowing down how do I even know what any of this means? You know, a lot of people have never heard of financial literacy before and so many other things, right? So I'm excited to just be able to provide that with them today. And also, I know that I would love to have you again in the future. So we're just going to say that now. We'll manifest that you have the availability for another segment with us. So as we get started, I wanted to hop right in and just talk to you about legacy banking and understanding that portion more since you brought that up. For our listeners who might not know, what exactly is legacy or family banking, and why should families care about this approach?
So just like you said, legacy, family banking, infinite banking, They're synonymous terms that a lot of people are hearing about, but they're just ultimate concepts on how to cut out the middleman, the bank that most of us are used to and think that they're there to handle our money. And that's the only way we could, I guess you could say, use our money and put our money in a specific place that is safe, right? So when we're talking about legacy and family banking, it is a concept that you just have to rewire your mental thought on how you use your money and how your money can be multiplied several ways versus just using it one time. And so, why is it so important for families to learn this? Is because the most successful families out here, like the Rockefellers, do this. They do it and they do it very well, and it's just something that wasn't taught, and I think that's on purpose. But we can get into that on a different day. But these generational wealth preservation strategies is what families should learn now, especially with this economic state of emergency. There are a lot of things that these families want to do, but they just don't have the knowledge, and then they might get the knowledge or they might hear about it, but then they don't know the approach and how to do it and what actually would qualify them to do it, because a lot of families think very singular, or oh, you got to do it on your own, or this is something that I got to have a lot of money to do.
You mentioned the Rockefellers, right? Some people are not familiar with them, probably the younger generation, especially. I would say anybody really millennial down probably isn't so familiar, or maybe heard about him or the family. But families like the Rockefellers, they're often held up as like the gold standard of wealth preservation, right? Within that family or families like theirs, what specific strategies or philosophies did they use to have their children follow to make their wealth last as many generations as they did? Because we both know Rockefellers did everything right. They're still using the same money since like the 1800s.
That is correct, Jasmine. Yeah. Rockefellers are that gold standard of generational wealth preservation just because they have the beautiful aspect of trust. It is a thing that every company, every corporation, I mean, let's be honest, the United States of America corporation, they use trust. And then with the trust, you actually have provisions, meaning stipulations on how to handle the family bank. The Rockefellers actually had a family office and they all had foundations. So there's provisions that the family, John D. Rockefeller, actually set into play as far as the trusts go. And the family had to follow them. If they wanted an inheritance, if they wanted to be a part of it, if they wanted to ever have a business, if they wanted to start a family, right? There were provisions that John D. Rockefeller, which was their philosophies, but really their values, his values that he implemented into his trust and created these provisions for all of his families to follow, because he really thought with that mentality, the philosophies, it's something that when you talk about principles, principles don't change. Okay, principles are principle. Without those principles and that belief system, anyone can kind of make gray areas as far as decision making. But John D. Rockefeller was genius in the sense of a lot of things that not only set his family in motion to be one of the richest families in the world, but also created the United States of America as well. If people really read on John D. Rockefeller and the family, they definitely came up with the concept of having more workers and teaching the education system, and so I think that's something that families should read about because it's important. Do we ever ask ourselves why? How do I know how to pay a bill? How do I know how to do this? How do I know how to do that? Most of the time, are my parents. You know,
Mm-hmm.
our parents told us what to do, not how to think.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that has trickled down for so long, for so many decades. I'm not even going to say years, decades, where A lot of us just do without seeking any information. And I think that that time has come where a lot of people are really changing that mentality. So, principles and provisions, those are two things I think we could take away from that. The strategy was through the trust, and the philosophies were kind of put into those provisions and to allow them to continue to, generationally speaking, pass down their wealth.
Absolutely. And it was taught to every
Mhm.
single family member, for sure.
Okay, Kim, thank you for that. What would you say are some of the most common mistakes that you see families make when trying to protect their legacy financially?
One of the most common mistakes I see that families do as far as protecting their legacy is not understanding why or what they're investing in. It's easiest way to say, right? But the biggest thing that I've seen that most people don't do, right, is that they actually get financial literacy. A lot of families don't even understand how money works. A lot of families don't even understand a spending plan. I don't like to call it a budget plan, but a lot of my counterparts around me didn't learn how to track their money and allocate their money um, appropriately. They didn't steward it in a fashion that was necessary at a very young age. Um, they didn't even know how money worked. They don't even know how to pay bills. They don't know how to. There's a lot of things that ties into families not having financial literacy. And so with their children, if the parent doesn't have financial literacy, what about the children? How are they going to learn? And then if they don't learn, what are they going to ultimately do and go when they leave the nest? They ultimately do stupid things with their money, you know.
Mm.
And so I feel like that's the most common mistake before someone figures out that they've been doing it the wrong way as far as their money.
Yeah, I definitely can see how. I mean, we can't learn from somebody who doesn't know something, but maybe a lot of the times that they don't know that they don't know, and they're only teaching us as much as they know, and then we're using that information, which I think why a lot of families and their children they stay and they become dependent on their parents because financially they just weren't really taught that. Now, there is a popular belief though where I feel like legacy building is only for wealthy families. So, how would you address this myth, and how can everyday families benefit from strategies typically associated with the ultra wealthy?
Well, number one thing about this myth is that people think you need a lot of money to make money, but you don't. Everyday people like me and you can put our money to work and have it grow and multiply tenfold, right? Because ultimately you cannot save your way to being a multi-millionaire. You really can't. Can you save it and feel like you can pay for retirement or something? Then maybe. But if you want to pass down generational wealth, right, there are some strategies that families can actually use that ultra wealthy use as well. So you don't need to be ultra wealthy to use a banking concept like infinite banking. You don't need to. You can still use the concept, which is a strategy for anybody.
Mm.
Even if you have $5,000, doesn't mean you need $5 million to do the exact same thing that the wealthy is doing, right? So with 5,000, okay, let's take 20% of your 5,000, all right, and then use that and invest that, and then that can actually do something called compound interest, right? That's the eighth wonder of the world in general. If people really understand compound interest, that is with time, right, and that consistency, families can do exactly what the ultra wealthy are doing.
This is a myth, and it is something that you can do yourself. I mean, when you really think about it, once upon a time, the people who are wealthy weren't wealthy. Somebody had to start that for their family. Like John D. Rockefeller, he's the one who started that for their family. He was a entrepreneur or, business owner like ourselves. And he was like, listen, I'm starting to make a lot of money and I don't want it to go to waste. How can I be forward thinking? And then he took these strategies, like Kim said, and put them into place. And now we just get to see the result from it. And now all we see is, oh, these people are wealthy, but it did take somebody. And I hope that that somebody is a person who is listening today who's willing to stop and say, hey, I'm going to be that person to change everything for the generations going forward, as well as, those who are alive today. Now, you spoke about specific strategies. I know that you specialize in strategies like Index Universal Life. Can you briefly explain? Because I know it's a little bit of a complex strategy, but can you briefly explain what that is and why you believe that it's such a powerful tool in legacy planning?
Yes, I believe that is definitely the one thing out there, um, the only thing, honestly, that anybody can get because cash value insurance in general can be utilized as an asset class versus something that most people would think as death insurance. Something like an IUL or whole life cash value policy. These specific tools, they're products, but most people need to be able to qualify to be in them. All right. And to how to qualify is through your health and your finances. Okay. You don't need to have a perfect credit score for it, but you definitely need to have the money to invest in it because it is the most powerful tool out there that the IRS actually puts in their codes and says you can utilize it as something that can be for legacy planning, for retirement supplementing. You can even borrow against it for investments that you might feel like you want to take over time for educational purposes. It's just such a big tool that most people don't know about because when it comes to life insurance, only people understand and know death benefit and death insurance. So, as far as a index universal life contract, it is a contract. So, it is binding you and it's for you for the rest of your life. Okay. And with these things, the most powerful aspect is that there's living benefits that most death insurance doesn't give. And so that's why it's a powerful tool in people's, legacy planning tool belt that can subsidize any kind of financial burdens or financial plans that you want to invest in. There's ways that you have to do it so it can be cash value driven. That's where you have to be in the right hands and you have to be around knowledgeable people where they know and understand number one, your priorities and goals and your fears as far as money as well. Because, this game of money, it is a game. Imagine if someone told you you were playing a game, but you were playing a game that you didn't know the rules to. But then if someone was like, hey, you're playing a game, there's rules to it, and I'm going to teach you it. Don't you want to be around
Mm,
that person?
definitely.
I would want to be in those people's hands. But, you have to be mindful that there are people out there that don't want your best interests. And you have to practice some discernment and do your research. That's something that my wealth planning firm, that's what we do. We take our pride in really putting the client first versus anybody else. You can put us up against a lot of people out here, and we're going to always make sure that we're out here to help the client first.
That's amazing. I guess that's where that tagline comes from is health is wealth, right? You can't, that's
Yes.
now that, we speak with knowledge and knowing these things, it makes me look at that statement so differently. Because we know people say health is wealth, because I feel like it was like, oh, as long as you're healthy, then, you'll be around to spend your money. And now I'm like, no, health is wealth because that's how you get qualified, honey, for the big, for the big dollars so that you can use it later. So I think that's an awesome tool. And I also think it's an awesome perspective. It's just that a lot of people think life insurance, they automatically think of death, like you said. And is that death insurance or life insurance, right? So really knowing your options and being mindful of what you need is so important. For people that are starting out, for our listeners who may be just starting out, or somebody who hasn't considered legacy planning seriously, what are a few clear first steps that they should take immediately?
First step is figure out where your financial GPS is, meaning where are you today, right? Without awareness, without bringing forth the things that we might not want to talk about, where we're like, oh, we have leaks, we have debts, we have this, we have that. You need to know how much you're bringing in and how much you're putting out, right? I seriously believe that most people are living above their means, outside of their means. And so the biggest thing to me to start is get a full financial review. Okay. And that's something that we provide free for all of our clients, is to really look at where you're at currently today. And then we can actually help you strategize to where you want to be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? Because these are tools that you use for the long run. These are not short term tools. I'm telling you now, someone like a Warren Buffett, why is he an investor that is so adamant and who's so protective about losing money? He said his number one rule is do not lose money. And the number two rule it says go back to number one. Do not lose money. But guess why he is so confident that he won't lose money? Is because he owns millions,
Mm,
billions of dollars in insurance. So
yeah.
if all his money is insured, right? How confident do you think he is when it comes to his money and the choices he decides to invest in?
Quite confident.
If if everybody did that, if everyone said, "Hey, I have three houses, cars, this and this and that. My net worth is 1.5 million, and you had 2, 3 million worth of cash value policies out there. Do you think you'd ever be scared to invest into yourself, into your family's future, into the things that matter?
Absolutely not.
Most people work from scarcity. Most people work
Mm,
from lack of, right? Oh, you better get that degree so you can make more money, but then you got to use that money to to pay for that degree,
yeah.
and hopefully that thing you went to school for doesn't become obsolete.
That's something that I feel like I've seen so much more since the pandemic was just a drop in things. And for us living in this day and age, that is something. We hear about it back in the day when maybe certain positions were no longer necessary as they, were changing into the digital age. There was people who are like, I went to school to be a farmer and now here I am and no one needs farming or whatever it may be, right? And I do feel like because of the pandemic, a lot of those kids that were in college afterwards, it was like, yeah, we're not really caring about that because that position's actually not essential. So it is, I think it's things like that that make us stop and really look at our finances and look at our decisions and how we can just opening our mind that maybe things aren't the way that they are, which is why we are here having this conversation right now. So thank you for that. That was a great answer. So we've talked about tools. Now let's shift into mindset because legacy isn't just about money, it's about how we think, how we teach, and how we pass this on, right? For what you're telling me, for what we know. What do you find yourself reminding your clients the most when it comes to nurturing a generational legacy mindset?
Well, I mean, the number one thing is financial literacy and how it can be passed down to whomever, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily their children, but everyone around us, right? When one person learns, another person can learn. And so
Mm,
if you take responsibility in saying, "Hey, I want to end this quote unquote generational curse, but also now I want to start this new generational link of success and abilities and privilege," right? You have to start with financial literacy. You have to want to learn. You have to want to
mm,
know. You have to want to have that information to pass down and to transfer over, honestly, right? When we talk about mindset, what you do not learn, you will transfer, period.
mm, that's
So if
powerful.
you so if you don't learn anything, guess what you're going to pass on? The next person that won't know anything.
Mm. Now, that's good. That's really powerful for a lot of families, especially those from communities where money is very taboo. Just starting the conversation can be the hardest part. How do you recommend that families start these legacy conversations, especially if money is typically a taboo subject for them?
I like talking to the grandparents first, honestly. Because one thing that a lot of families don't realize is are the traditions that our grandparents have. They might not necessarily be because of they chose them. Some people feel like their grandparents or great grandparents did something because they chose those quote unquote traditions, but a lot of the times that's all they were working with what they had, and a lot of it is information. A lot of it is knowledge that was they were allowed to have. You know, at
Hmm.
one point, women weren't even allowed to bank
Right.
at one point, right? So when we talk about money and money taboos, it starts with the things that we were even allowed to do as women, we were even allowed to do as minorities, or we were even allowed to do as a class of people. You
Yeah.
know, maybe it's more taboo because of the lack of information
Hmm.
and the inability to trust themselves with money.
Mm.
So, with knowledge, will create confidence that what they're doing is the right thing.
Definitely. And starting somewhere is better than not starting at all. I feel like with these kind of conversations, and just like Kim said, you don't know what you're going to learn. You don't know if you're not asking the questions and you're just assuming the answer. And also give your elders some grace. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Give your family grace. They do not know all of the things that we now know. They didn't have a computer at their fingertips. They didn't have a cell phone at their fingertips doing all the brain work for them. And just like Kim said, a lot of this stuff was not available to us at all. And I think that there's some learning in history, right? There's learning in finding the answers, which is what we do here at DCHP. You can connect with your family and then heal all this money taboo from what you are discovering. And it's so important. I actually had spoken with my grandmothers before they passed about like money and stuff, and they would tell me stuff, and I wouldn't listen, of course, because why would a kid listen at the time? Like, we're like, yeah, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't know, none of that. Or like how they used to have we used to have checkbooks and the little balance book, check and balance book that you used to carry with you. Like, all those things are non existent today. We might still do them, but do them differently. Women didn't even, they could not get credit cards until I believe it was in the 80s. And there's so much other things that limited people. And maybe your family was one of those people that were limited. So I urge you to have those conversations. That was really great advice there. Now let's bring this all to life with a real story. Yeah? Because I think when people hear what's possible, it makes it feel even more possible. So, can you share any examples of a family that you've worked with who made a big shift financially or generationally through this kind of legacy planning?
Oh, there's so many. That's what I'm so happy about is that When I assumed the responsibility to teach, people were ready to learn and listen and apply, right? I currently have a family. Ultimately, they wanted to have their own family office and their own family bank, just like the Rockefellers. The mom started first, then the daughter, the husband, son, and then their parents. They want the same thing. So one thing they did do, they had a big family meeting and it was like, hey, this is what I want to do in the next 5 to 10 years. What do y'all think? Then everybody said their 2 cents, and everybody said, I want to be a part of that. I want to do that too. I want to be able to provide that for my kids. You know, the siblings were like, yeah, mom, dad, thank you so much. Like, I don't know any of this, but I want to know. I don't want to be bad with money. I want to
Mm.
be able to teach my offspring my legacy and continue your legacy, really. You know, the parents work so hard and they're tired. They're getting tired. They're like, man, we don't want to work anymore. And so now they're like, let's put our all of our monies to use together.
Mm.
So when I talk to them about specifically a family office, a family bank, they all were saying, if we do it together, we're going to be better as a whole and we'll be able to impact more people moving forward with just their story. So, to give specifics, each family member has a minimum of $150,000 in death benefit, and then they're contributing a certain amount of money every year to their policies. All their policies have living benefits. All of their policies have cash value growing and accumulating tax free. It's going to be transferred tax free. It's going to be, there's going to be some indexing so that the money grows as well while it's there. And they're going to be able to borrow against it, just like a bank. If anybody, if any kid, if any, it didn't matter who was in the family, if anybody wants to start a business, they're all going to specifically request, money, but also give their business plan to the whole family. And they're going to tell the family, this is what I want to do. And the family votes in and says yes or no. Or hey, let's get more details. Let's put a better plan together. Or let's find somebody that can help us with this business plan. But it's more about teaching the ability to participate through action versus feel like they are entitled to the money.
Mm. Wow. Honestly, that is amazing. I think, in all perspectives, just hearing this story, I think of the parents must feel like, hey, as a mom, I'm doing things right. Like, I'm setting this up now, and, for our future selves, we won't ever have to worry. And not only that, but I can support my kids because I do think that so many parents want to support us, and a lot of times
Hmm.
they can't. So for
Yeah.
this family to step up and, to have had the privilege to work with you guys at Yellow Brick and with you, Kimberly, and you guys put together something for them so powerful that they decided, hey, not only is this for me, I want my kids in on this. And now our parents are inspired by our action and our example, and now they're also doing it. So that's 3 generations right there that has just been taken care of and created their own bank, which is just incredible because I don't know if you guys have been listening, but per our conversation today, Kim, all I've heard you talk about is health is wealth. Not once did you say, hey, you got to have a credit score in order to create a family bank. And I think that alone can do so much for a family to just really shift their mindset on what's important. Are we saying credit scores aren't important? Well, I beg to differ on this, but yes and no. I think what's more important is assets, compounding your money, and having the protection on it so that it does last, like this family did. And I just, yay for them because that is such a cool thing. Like, when you're young, that's what you hope for is that you can live out your dreams and live out your business dreams or whatever it is you want to do and not feel limited. And if we do this early enough, or if your families do it early enough, That's something that you can set up for your kids really young, and then they can grow up and have these things available to them and not feel limited. And I feel like that makes the biggest shift generationally. So that's incredible story. And I know you have so many more other stories, like I can only imagine, but that is awesome. So to tap in a little bit deeper, because I really do like where this conversation's going. I love the examples. I think that there are also people who, like us, as currently, we don't have children, or I don't have any direct heirs that I want to leave anything to, right? Like, for those listeners that might be thinking, why would I need life insurance or a legacy plan? And what would you say to those folks who feel like they don't have a traditional beneficiary? Like, who am I going to leave this to? What am I doing all this for?
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. There are a lot more single older adults nowadays than before. Either they lost their people at some point, or they were divorced, or they became, like I said, widowed, or they just never had kids in general, right? One thing I don't believe a lot of people currently in the United States are thinking about are our baby boomers, are our Gen X's, where they are by themselves, but guess what? Who's going to end up taking care of them? And that is a big, big population. And by 2050, that it's going to be 20% of the population is going to need some sort of health care at home, in a facility, or wherever. But just so y'all know, right now in 2025, just for home health, this is not paying for anyone to take care of you either. It costs 6,000 a month, and this is
Wow.
before inflation. Okay, before
Mm,
inflation, with inflation over the next 30 years, could you imagine how much you're going to end up spending just for long-term care? So with something like a cash value insurance contract, you will be able to build in long-term care for your near future of being older. A lot of people are living longer.
mm-hmm.
A lot. Women, you are literally predicted to live older than your male counterpart. Period. So can you imagine that, you outlive everybody, but then you outlive your money
Mm.
to take care of yourself?
Uh,
I know several people right now who are over 70 who are like, "Whoa, where am I going to get this money? Who's going to take care of me?" And then it's about, too, when you think about not even pride, but their dignity
yeah.
on how they go out, how they end up passing. It's, can I choose to have already everything arranged, or do I need to have my friends go fund me
Yeah.
donations, right? It's like it's sad, but this is a scary truth for us in
Mm-hmm.
the United States alone, let alone over across the world, on just the how much money it takes for medications, for in-home health care. All these things are necessary to continue our lives, right? To have a quality of life. So just because you don't have heirs, don't mean you don't need life insurance. You
No.
need long-term care insurance for when you get old, period. And that's
What a
everybody.
Yeah, what a great silver lining there, right? Well, I just want everyone to sit with that for a second, because I think our minds have been conditioned to be like, "Oh my gosh, it's so sad and it's so scary. One day I'm going to be old. That's scary. Who's going to take care of me, right? How can I afford that?" But also feeling sad for people who are around us that this might be a reality to one day. But it's like, when you have limited information, it creates that scarce in your mindset, right? Now, knowing what you just said, planting that seed of, hey, this isn't just about death, this is about life, and you can set yourself up for the future. That is so important. It's so important for your elders and for yourselves. to say, hey, guess what? I am my own heir. I'm going to pour into myself, you know, plan into my future because this day and age, yeah, it's a real reality right now. Kim, this conversation has been incredibly valuable. And before we wrap up, could you tell our listeners where they can find you, follow your work, or connect to learn more?
You can definitely find me on www.yellowbrickfinancial.com. Also, personally, my brand is Getting Wealth with Kim, and you can connect with me and book a session with me on my live calendar. And so I look forward to connecting with anybody who's looking to learn more, who wants to grow abundantly with their families, or they just want to prepare for them for their own retirement. So I'm excited.
Wonderful. You guys, we will also add all of her links into our show notes. So, no worries there, so that you can connect with Kim later. Here at the DCHP Lounge, every episode ends with reflection and action because legacy building happens one intentional step at a time. Before we close, I want to leave you all with something to reflect on. And we're going to do something special that we don't normally do. And I'm going to have Kim actually give you guys your journaling prompt this week, so that you guys can take the time to pause, write, and process. Then from there, I will provide you with our challenge for the week. Kimberly, what is a journaling prompt that you would like for our listeners to have this week that they can do some healing towards for today's episode?
First things first, we always think about where we're at currently. Okay. So, currently, how much money will you need to live comfortably in today's world? And with the money you're currently making, how much are you putting aside for retirement? And will you outlive or have an abundant amount of money to live off of during retirement?
That is deep, you guys. She's giving you something to get really, really deep about this week. So that was a great prompt. Thank you so much for participating and wanting to provide a prompt for this week's journaling. I'm going to go ahead and challenge you guys for this week. I do challenge you all to have one intentional conversation with a family member about money or legacy planning. It could be as simple as sharing one thing that you learned from this episode, or as detailed as discussing your family's long term financial goals. The point of this challenge is to just open the door. Now remember, even the smallest shifts create ripple effects. Keep discovering, keep healing, and keep building the legacy you were meant to leave. I will see you guys next week on the DCHP Lounge. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode here on DCHP Lounge. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear it. Be sure to follow us and keep the conversation going on Instagram at the DCHP Lounge, and you can visit us online at dchppodcast.com for full show notes, resources, and any links that you've heard from today's guests or sponsors mentioned. Remember, healing, growth, and legacy building all start with one small step. Until next time.